Welcome friends, fellow meat enthusiasts. We got a lot going on today. I have a couple of beef shoulder roasts I had in my freezer, as well as some excess fat from some previous videos we did. I've got my tabletop grinder and my food processor. A lot of the time you could call ahead at a butcher shop or a meat department in the grocery store and ask them for their excess fat. In most cases, that's free of charge. And I would actually specify, hey, I want steak fat from New York strips, from ribeyes, from short loins, or from oxtails, because that is high quality fat that you can grind up with a leaner, cheaper cut you may have got on sale, like these shoulder roasts here, and make a delicious burger blend. I may have heard people say before, now the best burgers I ever had was when I took that perfectly marbled ribeye and ran it through the grinder. And I've even seen where some of the bigger companies that put burgers pattied on the shelf, they say we use these nice cuts with perfect marbling, and it just makes me laugh, because there is no marbling once you put it through a grinder. You would not be able to tell the difference of taking a perfectly marbled ribeye, dropping it through that grinder, versus the same exact fat ratio of something perfectly lean and something perfectly fat going through to make the same ratio. You would not be able to tell the difference. Marbling is only there for the texture and flavor when you're eating it as a steak, not when you grind it. So that's why I would rather do it this way. I'd rather keep that ribeye in my freezer, have my ribeye I need it to, and get more out of it for less money. We're going to separate the meat into two different batches. One batch is going to go through the tabletop grinder. The other batch is going to go through the normal kitchen food processor. We'll see, is there a difference? Do you need a grinder to make these delicious burgers at home? I don't think you do, but we'll find out if there's a difference. You don't have to season this. You don't even have to use these exact cuts. And if you want to replicate, make sure you can replicate doing this, or want to get to a perfect 80-20, all you'd have to do is measure out your lean versus your fat, and you can do the math there to figure out what's 80-20 or what fat percentage you're at. I'm just going to eyeball it today and go with what I think is going to be a good blend. I'm just going to remove this shoulder clawed fat, which is not as tasty as the steak and oxtail fat. Come here, boy. Cutting into strips, because that seems to be what's easiest for this kind of tabletop grinder. So it's a good starting point to feed it through with ease. If you're new at this, on those bigger pieces, it's probably good to lay the piece of meat down as flat as you possibly can. And then a good technique, put your knuckles out so you can put your knife right away from you, and you know you're not going to cut yourself. All right, so I'm going to leave that by itself for a moment. Get into my steak fat here. Make sure you keep it cold, or it'll start getting melty on you. We actually had this in the refrigerator right up until we were going to cut it. And fat will jam up your grinder a lot more than lean will. So that's why I'm cutting it finer. See how the fat looks dry, it's not slimy, it's not like slippery, it's just good, hard, dense feeling fat. That's what you get from oxtail fat, from ribeye fat. Just good, high quality fat. It does make a difference on a texture level and a taste level. Like I said, all of it's acceptable. You could cut up a whole shoulder claw just fine with its fat and grind a tasty burger, but we're trying to make it exceptional here. Now the ratio isn't adding up here. I obviously got way too much fat, but it won't go to waste. We can easily make it into some tallow. We could do a short dedicated video on that if you like. Beef tallow is really good for cooking, for basting, as a replacement for any kind of seed oil or anything like that. This is what's going to go through our grinder. A little bit more because it's easier to do, because more horsepower fires right through. This is what's going to go through our food processor. And we have a reserve pile of fat if we decide we're making it too lean that we could drop in. If you put too much fat in the beginning, you can't undo that. You're just going to have some pale grease fire burgers. For the food processor, you got to chop it a little finer than you do for your grinder. That's all I'm going to do here. 80-20-ish. Like I said, you could always add more if it starts to look a little too lean on you. So I let this sit in the freezer a couple of minutes because it's going to heat up while it grinds. You don't want it getting too mashy. In the food processor, there is a fill line, so you can't do it all at once. I get that this is a lot of work, but I'm telling you, when you make the perfectly textured burger, worth it. So I'm a little bit into chopping it, and I'm deciding it's a little too lean. No problem. Here comes our extra fat to save the day. No weird bits, all just lean and fat. It's going to make some tasty burger. After you've done this a few times, you kind of decide what texture you like, whether you can make it too whipped or not. I like it about like that, where you still can pick out little fat bits, but when it cooks in, because it's just pure lean and pure fat, the texture's nice. So about like this is what I'm looking for. This is our third batch. 3 quick batches it took to do this amount of meat. Got our meat out of the freezer again. Into the grinder we go. You don't want to kill the texture, but you do gotta give it a little bit of mixing. Just trying to get the fat consistent. Looks pretty good to me. Smells good. Ready to eat some burgers. We're going to use a recipe where we add in some Old Bay. It's got some celery salt in there, so it gives us some salt content, so don't add any other salt. A little bit of buffalo sauce, sounds weird, I know, and some blue cheese, and it makes a really good black and blue burger if you're into that sort of thing. That's why I didn't want to overmix it earlier. As soon as you feel you got it evenly distributed, stop mixing. So something about that size. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/3 of a pound probably. That is a good looking burger right there. Looks good enough to eat raw right now. These are the grinds that came from the tabletop grinder. This is our first one from the food processor. 10 awesome looking burgers here. 6 from the tabletop grinder, 4 from what we did in the food process. Steak Wolf, let's go get a beer. Go get me a beer. Good boy. Let's go. His favorite part of the video. Finally, burgers are done. Time to eat. French fry hack, we just ordered them. We didn't make them this time. We're not communists, so truffle salt heavily. I'm going to start with the burger that went through the grinder. Different cheeses on them to identify which was which so I didn't get mixed up. Let's see. So good. Wow, I mean, not like a funny bit, no unpleasant texture, just smooth, perfect bite, delicious, right amount of moisture, just an excellent burger. And that was the one through the grinder. Here's the one we did with the food processor. I don't think there's going to be much difference. They're both great. Subtle differences because they were made in 2 different batches. You can tell a little more fat in this one, but the same, just smooth, perfect bite in a burger. I know it feels like a lot of work. To me, it's kind of a fun project anyway, and I hate being disappointed in a burger. I just hate it. So I don't mind making it myself to get what I actually want. If you guys like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell to see what me and Steak Wolf are up to next. Thanks a lot for watching.